Ahsoka, Balance of Truth, Book 1, Chapter 11. Within the confines of his chamber, set deep inside his fortress on Mustafar, Vader had gotten the message. As he watched the aggressive Togruta weave her way through trooper after trooper with deft precision and cunning accuracy, the ferocity in her technique held his attention most through countless replays. The method was identifiable and mutated in multiple forms, yet it was more than that. Different practices melded with different forms into something never seen before. The confrontation unfolded reversely as Vader toggled the hollow emitter controls back to the beginning. He understood with each restart how she gained the upper hand in their duel a few years ago, a duel he knew he should have lost. She had outmaneuvered him countless times and could have inflicted a mortal blow at any number of points. That she hadn't spoken to what he perceived was her disabling weakness, but there was not something more. Had she evacuated the young Jedi to prevent him from destroying them, or was it more sinister? Had she wanted this victory to prove to him that she was somehow stronger? Before the last 2 hours, it was a question he didn't believe he would ever be able to answer. Fate had brought her back. Was it her destiny or his? Vader reeled himself back in to watch the entire encounter again and compare his encounter with her on Malachor. He had to run the recorded image at 3/4 speed to grasp everything that had happened due to her moving speed. Deliberate. The word struck him the first time he had watched the carnage. She could have employed Shicho and had the same results, but she had taken the offensive immediately after realizing her partner was being fired upon. She was low with acrobatic kicks and had engaged in a combination of Suresu and Ataru. As he continued, he acutely saw the point at which she had switched altogether to Juyo and finished off the clone. Again the word came to him, deliberate. She was goading him. Her admission came through audio impeccably clear. It took a measure of insanity to lace into the tirade directed at his master, but to him that insanity was courage he always remembered her having. The courage he wasn't confident he could wield himself, not for lack of it, but for a means. He had insisted on this task being conducted without his suit on so that he could watch it with his own eyes, not through the bespectacled reddish mirage the helmet provided. He returned the hollow to the beginning yet again and scrolled through its entirety at half speed this time. The lightsaber thrown was deadly accurate, and the ability to retrieve her primary while still under siege and on the aggressive with her secondary was to be admired. "You have grown powerful, Padawan," he said with a raspy, gravelly voice. He wanted to see her eyes for the final part of this engagement, and had stopped the image several times upon hearing his former name, anticipating what her expression would have looked like, what shone in her eyes. Was it hate? Or was it simply a passion for what she was doing? The finale with the clone was the most interesting. She had employed dark side powers beyond what he thought she could. He knew that to crush and snap a spine took considerable effort, but her rage had granted her incredible energy and strength. His thoughts hung in the air, almost tangible, as he fought to understand. Her purpose was eluding him entirely. It was at the very end, however, that a fresh idea was taking form. She was not defining any allegiance to light or dark, but combining them to turn herself into a deadly weapon. She knew she was being watched and that her message, in all its lunacy, would be seen by those it was intended for. "She was putting on a show," he whispered, "but not for me." Anger took hold of him, renewed at her insolence. Could she vie for his master's attention? She had insulted him directly for the benefit of his master, he concluded. In agitation, he ran through the commands to secure his helmet and impatiently waited for it to descend and lock into place. His breathing was instantly more rapid, aided by the completed transpiratory, as rage welled up and took the place of any reason that was left in him. A rage was born of contempt, anger he had not felt since Padme turned her back on him. Anger, resentment, hatred, all boiling and seething audibly through the mask. His vision dulled beyond anything that same mask would impart. He began to channel that energy into one final thought, one derisive and agonizing thought. His master had intended, continued a path he had no intention of sharing with Vader. What that path was, he could not say. The visions and premonitions that had once defined Anakin were utterly and irretrievably lost to Vader, although we could tell something was on the horizon, something irreversibly significant. He would leave that knowledge to his master, he thought, and decided to play along, at the moment, that his master would include him when he felt the timing was right. This suited Vader fine, as their agendas were beginning to venture into different directions, and the outcome he, for so long, wanted to employ was looking almost impossible with each day that passed. The memory of Padme hung into his thoughts far too long, and he cursed himself for that weakness. In trying to rebury it, he saw in his mind all the faces of those that had betrayed him: Masters Windu, Master Yoda, Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, his wife, and now Sidious. There will be retribution, my master. A reckoning will ensure the apprentice becomes the master. You have set that into motion yourself, and I intend to complete the task. His whisper through the modulator was only for himself. The signal from the door instantly broke his meditative trance, and he allowed entrance without a word. My lord, Governor Tarkin is requesting you presently. I am told he wishes to discuss a matter of foremost importance. Van E sputtered and ushered himself just as fast back as he had come. Vader made for the holotable and brought up the image of the Grand Moff without hesitation. Moff Tarkin, what is it? He demanded. A matter of distinction between two possible threats, Lord Vader. First, the long-range communique informs me of a growing rebel concentration near Dressel. Second, you requested a direct report on the status of the battle station's weapons capabilities. This will be forthcoming, as we are currently running tests on the hyperdrive. To that point, we have reason to believe schematics of the battle station may have been compromised in some fashion. To what degree we have yet to ascertain. Be that as it may, I am extending my efforts to decipher as much as possible, Tarkin concluded. Very well, Governor. I will investigate the matter at Dressel. Keep me informed of the situation regarding the battle station, Vader insisted. I will, my lord, Tarkin replied as his hollow image dissolved into blackness with a chirp. Vader contemplated his options at the moment. He knew he should inform the Emperor of either situation, but was hesitant to decide whether he cared or not to do so. Divine it for yourself, he said finally, initiating his helmet comm to Vani. Have Admiral Ozzel prepare for our departure and have my shuttle ready. He quickly ended the transmission, not waiting for an answer. Ahsoka, Kawani calmly tried to wake her, eliciting no response. Ahsoka remained fast asleep in her bunk. Ahsoka, she tried again with more exuberance, but still without effect. She calmed R3 to engage the ship's hull breach klaxon. Do it in your bantha fodder, Ahsoka spoke with eyes closed, her hands grasping the pillow she was preparing to pin over her montrals. R3, belay that, Kawani quickly snapped off at her wrist. Thank you for that. My head is killing me already. That klaxon would have annihilated any sense of self I still possess, Ahsoka said as she slowly made to sit up, wincing with the effort. What's wrong, Ahsoka? Kawani asked with apparent puzzlement. Nothing detrimental, I hope, Ahsoka admitted. I went further than I had wanted to create the new saber, and am currently paying its price, she finished. Kawani sensed as much. The force still flowed smoothly in and around Ahsoka, but the currents out and around her were moving much quicker than the ones flowing through her, as if the force was nursing her. It must have been some event, Kawani thought out loud. It certainly was. I had never delved that deeply into it before. and completely understand now how one can get lost, Ahsoka admitted again. Like a mother or a father, it lends that comfort. If you're not careful, it will embrace you fully, taking you with it on its path, she finished. We'll have to discuss philosophy another time, I am afraid. We are currently on Tatooine, Mos Eisley specifically, and I have a rendezvous to tend to. I am not sure to do with the crates of kyber yet, but I have found a non-Trandoshan buyer for the remaining ashes. Kawani listed off the specifics. The onboard speeder is at your disposal. R3 will mind the ship. Here are the security entry codes, and I would like to resync our comm frequency before I leave, she finished, satisfied she had relayed all their information. Thank you, Kawani. For everything, I mean, Ahsoka said with sincerity. You could have walked away at any point, but you haven't, and I need you to know how much that means to me and how much it is appreciated. What, and miss all the fun and excitement? Kawani said with a laugh. Not a chance, sister, not a chance. With that, she turned to leave. Ahsoka could hear her return to her cabin briefly before issuing forth the boarding ramp and the subsequent hiss as it drew back into place, with another hiss and finishing click. Alone, save for the droid's presence, Ahsoka knew she had to delve into the realm of the Force once again to locate Obi-Wan. That wouldn't be an easy task in her present state, nor would it be advisable. That would have to wait, she both decided and acted upon simultaneously as she pushed herself off her bunk, turning around instantly as something brushed against her hand by a weight transfer leaving the padded surface. Her new saber lay there. She remembered her actions vividly in crafting it and moved slowly to retrieve it. It almost felt as if it begged her to wrap her hands around it, and as she thought, she sensed jumbled whispers in her head. Voices from ages past and present, new friends and old foes from the conflicts that had been her entire life, either begging for mercy or demanding justice. Voices of masters she knew to be long since deceased, and voices of those she had no memory of. The saber held firmly in her hands, the voices began to diminish, but two took forms she had no recollection of. A female voice it was at first, then transitioned to a more masculine form, both counseling a host of virtues she knew she possessed but had not practiced thoroughly in the last 24 hours. Patience, peace, compassion, trust, forgiveness. Gimsa ma vida duashla, gua mietwa, givita du tunguma. She repeated the phrase in Togrutan several times, and realized she knew the voices and why Ashla had come to her so quickly in the past. Her parents. She would never know them, but any emotional reaction to that fact was peacefully put to rest long ago. It was counsel within the words that she focused intently on. Accept my destiny, dispel my fear, go in peace. The saber called to her more intently, and she grabbed it with more conviction, feeling warm to the touch. Dumet du kos, ma vida du maruki, she called to the ceiling of the cabin as she ignited the lightsaber. Staring intently into the red blade, she felt at ease, relaxed, and rejuvenated. She leapt the ignited saber from hand to hand, feeling its almost weightlessness and the balance point from what little weight she could sense. Gripping it firmly in her left hand, she wanted to ensure the weapon was just as formidable as it was in her primary, as she laced into arcing weaves and twists, letting the erratic hum of the focused energy sink to her. Tossing it to her right hand in an overhand juggle, she leaned back to retrieve her usual secondary. She had it ignited and extended as she grabbed her new primary, executing a flawless Makashi stance with a low crouch on bent knees. There was no viciousness in her movements nor malice in her technique. It was an elegance, everything moving in a prescribed order, a transical, hypnotic dance of sight and sound. The more quickly she began to move, the more at peace she began to feel. The aggregate hums and haws of both beams, enhanced by the competing energy modulators, were picking up a furious crescendo, and she knew she would be but as a blur of movement herself. The more she employed her unusual and exclusive styles, the more robust she felt in her recovery from self deprivation. Still, she was more attuned to the natural force in the process, although it would take time to feel her entire self again, time she thought she was running low on, although she couldn't accurately explain. This practice of self discipline was a necessary step. As she had trained herself in the past, she closed off the hypnotic music of the dueling blades to incorporate her entire suite of senses into her practice. She could feel everything around, taste the recycled air, hear the deep baritone presence of the ship's systems, and see the astromech in her doorway watching her every move. With that, she whirled through the room at a fevered pace and stopped suddenly with her sabers crossed right in front of the droid's photoreceptor. Panting and heaving from the exercise, "See everything you came to see, little one?" Ahsoka sneered sarcastically as the droid backed up instinctively, albeit far too slow to prevent what would have been its absolute destruction. Its boops, beeps, and exaggerated whirls confirmed it was simply curious. Ahsoka laughed as she extinguished the blades, got up from the crouch she finished in, and simultaneously made to fasten both sabers at her hip, providing another conundrum of sorts since her original primary was still attached. 2 hands, 3 sabers. Something to figure out later as she clipped the new saber to another latch further removed behind her. Patting the astromech on the head, she moved toward the legitimate cargo hold with purpose. Contacting Obi-Wan was her immediate priority, and finding him, as it were, was her priority, but now the need for fresh air was paramount. Stepping into the hold and finding it unsurprisingly empty, she focused on the speeder strapped to the fore bulkhead. A modified 614 AVA would more than fit her purpose. Any resemblance to his basic form was almost non-existent if one wasn't standing on their hands. She tilted her head to confirm as much. She must have inverted the entire assembly, Ahsoka said with a laugh, applauding the practice of making the inconspicuous with only a few crafty hacks. At any rate, she had a dependable, fast, and light speeder to get her to wherever she was going. Checking her comm as she deployed the speeder, she used the codes Kawani had left to open the cargo bay ramp. A hiss and shake of the ship confirmed the code as she bent to her wrist again to ascertain their location. Kawani came in immediately with "Docking Bay 93. We'll leave when you're ready." Ahsoka hopped on the bike, threw her robe around her, donned the cowl, and left the ship.